Is that grounds for a copyright strike? I don't want to risk it. You know what I was trying to do. I'm not going to do the regular intro. You get it. So today we're talking about money as certificates of autonomy, and the reason I call them that and I insist on calling them that is because, as we will understand through the course of this episode, money sort of comes to represent value that you can exchange for resources. It is the access point or quantification of values that you can exchange for tangible resources that you can use for the development of yourself and everybody else, which is why money equals autonomy. It's not a secret. It's not, you don't have to be a genius to figure that out. Before we get to the episode, I sort of have to get some citations out of the way. The recommended reading for this episode is two treaties on civil government by John Locke, uh, Simulacra and Simulation by John Baudrillard, The Problem with the Rupee by B.R. Ambedkar, Weimar Republic by Charles River editors, Gold Standard in Theory and History. I forget the name of the editor, but I think you'll find it very easily. It's the first textbook that shows up. And How is Money Created? A YouTube video by Cold Fusion. Essentially, these are the resources that I referred to when I was making this episode. And now that we've arrived here, it's money, getaway. You get a good job. I can't force these lyrics into this intro. I'm just gonna cue the fucking. Hello everyone, for the third time of us trying to record this, because every time at the third minute mark my internet says bye. And today we're talking about money, as the title might have led you to believe. And we have with us Dheeraj, who was here around episode 37. Hi Dheeraj.
Hey Anuj, I'm really happy to be
Yeah,
here.
the third time I'm really not convinced that you're happy to be here, my man.
Maybe.
But Dheeraj is here because him and I really like to talk about the banking system, and he's been slightly more educated on the issue because of where he's been working recently. If you're a friend of Dheeraj's, which is entirely 90% of the audience here, um, you know that Dheeraj is working with crypto, which means that he knows a lot more about currency than I do in general, and decentralized finance even more than that. So we're going to talk about money first and then get into the forms of money and how it came about. So before we start talking about all of where money comes from, we need to understand what the fuck money is. Essentially, it's a replacement of the barter system. When society started to develop in the times of Indus River Valley civilization, Egyptian civilizations, everywhere in the river valleys where farming became plausible, the barter system needed to be replaced because the societal life was now at a point where you couldn't just barter those resources efficiently without wasting them. So you needed a token system. And at the time, tokens were copper coins, silver coins, things like that. And we'll get into how valuable metals came to be currency and how they were replaced to the currency as we understand it today. But that's where money comes from, essentially, at an anthropological level. The second thing that I want to bring to the attention of the audience before we go ahead with the discussion is social contract theory. And I know I talk about social contract theory every episode, but I just think that's how important it is. Social contract theory essentially means that everyone comes together and agrees on a few things that they won't do or will do in order to live in harmony and ensure that everybody prospers. Usually, the social contract is done between the sovereign and the public. And the sovereign usually used to be a monarch, then an oligarch, then a meritocrat, then an aristocrat, and now a democracy. So it's the contract essentially was the word of God, and ever since it's trickled down to something as simple as a legal document like our constitution in India or the Declaration of Independence in the USA, and subsidiaries of that. My third point, which is simulacra and simulation, we will get into once we start with the episode. But before that, we need to deal with money as a certificate of autonomy. And the reason I say autonomy is because how do you afford the things you want to do within a society? How is your social value evaluated if not money? And that's where I kind of want to understand where where does the line of how did we allocate money come along.
Sorry, I was muted, and I'm like, oh, damn, how do I unmute this? Right. So it's very interesting, right? Like we'll dive down into what money is. So according to me and a lot of definitions, money is basically like a store of value, and it's a medium of exchange. And also, like, just to talk in a very basic way, it's a value you give to your time as well, right? Like, because most of us are earning by uh, like working hour every hour, and that is some value you get, that is
I mean,
money.
even
And
salaries are for working hours throughout a month. So
right. That's what I meant. So that is the major part of it, right? Like medium of exchange and store of value. It started very in a very wholesome way when people just used to farm, and uh, like they did not need money that earlier, because you could just cook and hunt and eat whatever you produce. But as the societies grew, as the civilization grew, there were more roles, right? Like there was farming, there was hunting, there was like it was way more complex, right? And not everyone could farm the same thing, so we started with a barter system, right? I grow wheat, you grow rice, right? So I'll give you half a kg of wheat for 1 kg of rice, whatever scarcity and whatnot it was. And then it moved on to a system where, this got complicated because you don't know what is the exact value. It moved on to shells, it moved on to even coins for that matter. And then, like, we went to, maybe I'll not go deep dive into it, but like we moved on to a system where, we started exchanging gold. Okay. Gold was the ultimate store of value and medium of exchange. Why? This is something we need to understand, because we thought that gold is scarce, right? Like it's a natural resource, and there is like a limited supply of it, and it's extremely hard to get gold, right? Like you have to mine it, you have to do a lot of put in a lot of money, so that resource was scarce. So all of us agreed that, hey, gold is a very nice store of value instead of wheat or rice, because what happens, they are perishable, right? So gold cannot like just perish after some time. So we moved on to gold. And but the issue with gold was, like, it's hard to carry, you cannot fractionalize it. So these people came up with the concepts of um, promissory notes, if I'm not wrong, right? So what they did was, banks, as we call it, they used to issue some promissory notes.
I mean, I'm just going to interject you there and like insert this
Yeah,
another
yeah.
narrative that we need to follow for historical reasons, something that you educated me about actually. Like everybody thought gold was expensive, it was scarce, it was irreplaceable. The same thing when it comes to the Indian subcontinent was a silver coin. Because this is something that we found out while we were researching the episode together, that a rupee actually was an old Hindi word for a silver coin,
Rupaya.
rupiah.
Uh,
And yeah,
so
sorry.
yeah, it's extremely interesting to know that rupee or rupaya is one of the oldest form of coins or currency known to the mankind, right? Like it dates way back uh, to back in time, right? So one of the first formation of coins is the rupiah coin. So it's quite
Yeah,
interesting. Sorry,
and
go on.
I mean, of course, we then come back to the same place, even in India, as is everywhere else, where gold was the main currency. That moving gold is heavy, it's inconvenient. So what we move around is the promise of giving gold. So business is conducted on the basic promise of giving gold, and the actual gold is moved much later, to the
Right.
point that it's years apart.
Yeah. So I'll tell you. I'll give you a very nice example. So what used to happen? These promissory notes, basically, they are like, hey, you can use this note to exchange 1 bar of gold or 1 kg of gold or whatever, right? But it, people didn't actually start. They didn't redeem it because they knew this note held value. So people barely, like, went and redeemed it. So they just started using this as the currency. So this is the uh, like earliest form of bank notes or paper currency to exist. Okay, so this is where things get trickier. uh, what happens is, again, like, we're looking at a central point of failure. What could happen if someone is storing, again, you talk about social contract theory, right? This is where we are trusting a bank or an organ or a government with our gold. And if a robbery happens, what happens to your promissory notes, right? Like, that's something might have happened which I don't know about earlier, but this is where things get tricky. And also, moving on, these people, banks or governments, thought like, hey, we don't really need gold to issue these currencies, right? Like, we can issue these currencies on our own, right? So, and they started doing it, right? So in what we use today, if you remove any note, you see, if you're in India or even US, in India it says that this is a promise by the governor of RBI that this note is of value of 100 rupees, right? In a US note, it literally says, "In God we trust." Right? Like, the money is
That's a little
is
funny.
valuable because like, God, right? Earlier it was, if I could be wrong on this one, but before changing into a fiat system, which I will explain, it said, right, like, it's backed by gold, or it's something like that. Now it is backed by God. So that's a funny
I
thing.
believe another element that we need to sort of attribute to the moving on of promissory notes, even by the government, which like sort of turned into cash economies that we understand and live today, is the fact that gold was at a very great risk of being stolen while being traveled. So the RBI, like the banks all across land, along with government run financial institutions, were like, hey, what if we really limit the gold moving around, and we store it all in one place and secure it, make it like a institution that's difficult to steal money from, but that's where everybody's money is. Which is how banks sort of become this uh, big central institution
In
in
monetary
monetary
system.
systems, in financial systems in general,
Yeah.
and they sort of
Yeah.
give cash in exchange for gold. Every rupee, for example, is an exchange for a silver coin. That's sort of the system where it comes from. That's what it means when the
Right.
promise is written on a cash note. Am I wrong to assume that?
No, no, not at all. Not
Yeah,
at all.
so
Like,
that's how we got there.
and it's extremely scary because, like, moving around money, and if there is a loss, like, if there is someone steals it, like, what do we do? There's nothing you can do.
I kind of want to get into even scarier bits of it. So far right now, we're seeing that These currency systems work on a simple system. There's gold in the bank. The bank says,
Right.
here's a paper. Paper is worth of gold
Right.
because I said it is.
Right.
So use this
Yes.
paper as you like and tell that person to take the gold from me. But something very interesting happens in 1971. And
Yes.
from there, I'll let Dheeraj take over. I'll just explain how we got
Yeah.
to 1971. Before that, it's important to understand what happened in 1944. In 1944, all the allies decided that one brick of gold is equal to $15. And the reason that is important is because then the American dollar became the world reserve currency. That means that everyone in the world agrees that a note issued by an American bank is now worth a certain amount of gold, and each of our currencies, which is rupees, sterling, pounds, wherever you live, was now worth a certain amount of dollars, and a certain amount of dollars were worth certain amount of gold. And then, as Dheeraj will explain, something interesting happens in 1971, and if any important events I might have missed in the middle, please fill them in.
No, man, no, no. This is and that's a very nice explanation. Actually, I mean, I couldn't have explained it in that way, right? It becomes the world global reserve currency. But in 1971, Richard Nixon does something extremely scary or dangerous, right? So the US dollar moves off the gold standard. That means the US government or the Fed can print money without backing it with the gold, right? Now, look at the amount of countries who use gold, US dollar as world reserve currency, and why they do it, because it's backed by reserves of gold. Now, US can print as much money as they want at their own will, and this disrupts the entire cycle of trust, right? Like earlier we could trust that gold has value, now we need to trust that, hey, US dollar has value because of various reasons. Right now, the main reason here is, one, because it's a superpower, right? It's the most revenue generating or whatever, right? Like the biggest economy we have, and it has military, right? So now the money, like, you need security and military to protect the world reserve currency. So this is what happened, right? Like they moved on to a standard which is called fiat. Okay, so when money is not backed by a commodity, a currency is not backed by a commodity, it's called fiat, right? Like it's basically, you have to trust in the currency instead of it backing. There is it. Yeah, you wanted to say
Yeah,
something?
before I want you to explain the fiat system well, because I think you're much better at it than I am. But I just want to bring in the parallel that I've been holding back since we started this episode, which is simulacra and
Yeah,
simulation. Again, another one of books that my regular listeners might not be extremely alien to is written by Jean Baudrillard. Baudrillard with two L's. He's French. Don't ask. The book is about how there is reality and there is a simulation of reality. And on a long enough timeline, if you've been living in the simulation of reality, the simulation replaces reality completely because you have no memory of the reality. And it's sort of very easy to understand that philosophical concept with the help of money, because the introduction of fiat system is the replacement of reality with the first simulation. So there is a value that is represented by gold, that is represented by cash. And now, the first two realities, which is value and gold, are completely taken away, and cash by itself now holds value in the eyes of the people, because that's how we've done things so far. Everybody's habituated to it, nobody's panicking. And two, because of the fiat system, which Dheeraj will explain.
yeah. So fiat comes from the Latin word fiat, right? It meaning let it be done, or an order or a decree, right? Like someone gave an order. Anyway, so again, what's scary about this is, I think if you ask anyone, like in India or even in US, that hey, how does the value of this money come from? They will say that hey, it's backed by gold. Like this is a normal response I've asked everyone, right? Firstly, most of our uh, existence of rupee, it has been backed by silver most of the time, right? So it's even scarier that hey, we don't know that. And since 1971, it's US dollar is not backed by anything. So basically, uh, the fiat system again, right? Like when money is not backed by uh, anything, that means you have full autonomy and control over how you can manipulate money, right? You can increase inflation rate, you can try to, right? You can try to manipulate the stock markets or the global or your country's GDP. You know what's the worst thing you can do, which has happened to us is demonetize money. Okay, like that is something which we feel, oh, it was just done. But like if you look at a global perspective, it's a very big disrespect to your money, because all of us struggled so hard, right? Someone just came and they're like, hey dude, your money is not valuable, right? And it's no longer in use. So this is very scary. And another thing is, if you see what US is doing, it's printing trillions of dollars every year. Okay, like 20, I think 40% I could be wrong, right? Because they keep on printing. In for 20% of circulating supply of US dollars was printed into it. Excuse me, 2020. uh, I will explain what does this imply as well. And they're printing 6 more trillion, and they printed, oh my god, I can't keep up, right? And what what does this imply is, when there is a lot of flow of money, right, the value of the money decreases. Earlier, you remember, we had value on basis of gold, right? How much it is now, it is just like nowhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a good example of that is like, so, something that all of us know, that if you print a lot of money just to pay off things, it doesn't automatically increase the value of money or the amount of money in the system. History buffs will definitely know this example. 1935, 35, I don't know, Weimar Republic. They had huge war reparations to pay for World War One, 1925, I think. And these reparations had to be paid in Weimar Republic currency. And to keep the economy running and still pay off uh, uh, the reparations, they printed a lot more money. All that meant was a single unit of currency was worth less gold, and that's how that tumbled into inflation, and that's how it works even still. You have a limited amount of value behind a currency, and the more you print it, the less that value becomes.
Exactly, it's supply and demand, right? Like if the supply increases, the value decreases also. uh, Sadly, it creates inflation, right? The things keep on getting costlier and costlier, and you don't notice it at all. Like, I mean, you do notice it, because if you just look at India, I'll give you a simple example, right? Like if you take a Maggie ka packet, right? 5 years back, one packet used to fill you. Now you need one and a half. Why? Because they're not changing the prices, they're just decreasing the quantity of Maggie. And like that's the simplest example I can give you. So it doesn't mean Maggie's become costlier, it just means that the value of your money has gone down.
Yeah, excellent point. And that sort of leads me into something that interested me in this discussion altogether, is that creation of money through debt, which is how most of the wealth today is created. While I don't understand the finer prints of quantitative easing, what I understand is that because the currency of America does not have to be backed by gold, it has to be backed by word, and that's how loans are issued. My word is
Right.
good enough that at some point I'll have these many dollars for you to be given, and against that you give me real tangible assets, which is how we get to a place where 2008 market housing market crisis happens.
Crash.
So could you
Yeah.
expand on that?
I will. It's a bit complicated, but what Anuj is talking about is 2008 market crash, right? There's this movie which is called The Big Short. Is something you need to watch, right? Like if you're interested in money, if you're interested in finance, in markets, or just how bad the government handles money. That's a very it's a prime example. So I think this is something we have not discussed, but I will get into it. Right, like now from paper currency we have moved on to a digital currency. Right, all of us are using Paytm, Google Pay, um, what, right, MobiQuick, whatever, right, like all these apps to transfer money. And even in USA there's like Venmo, PayPal. All this is used to transfer money right now. We are using a lot of digital, and we are moving into that economy as well. Now what happens is, bank can literally issue money by like putting in numbers, right? Like they're providing loans. uh let's say I have to provide a loan to you. I don't have to really give you cash, right? Because hey, you're transacting online most of the time, right? And then they just put in the numbers and they make money. Okay, I'm oversimplifying this, extremely oversimplifying this, but that's how money is created with banks. Okay. And banks also create money out of thin air by something called the fractional reserve ratio. What does this mean is, basically, let's say I open a bank account and I deposit 10,000 rupees. Okay, now if you see the circular, RBI allows the banks to, like, provide loan out of that money I deposit to someone. That's how banks make money. Banks make money using your money. Okay, they don't really have any inherent cash with them. They use other people's money to make money. So banks give out seven. Let's assume, I don't know what the ratio is right now. Let's assume 75% can be given out to a person as a loan, and 25% is kept as a reserve, as a security, right? Like if anything happens, at least they have that much money. So this 75%, let's say, is given to Anuj, right? As and you do it as a business loan, or you want to start a new podcast, right? Like, so you need money, so you took a new loan. And then what you do is you don't spend all that money together, right? Like you wait, and like, you have to pay expenses, you have to pay editing, but like you have to pay it over a period of 12 months or whatever, right? So you take 7.5 thousand rupees and you keep it in your bank again. Now, what the bank does is, whenever you're not utilizing the money, 25% is kept as a reserve, and 75% of your 7,500 rupees is again given out as a loan to someone else. And this cycle keeps on going, right? So the bank is created out, like from 10,000 rupees, they can create like 40, 50, 70,000. I mean, there is a math to it. I'm not going to get into it, but like from a 10,000 rupees, it goes to on to a like a higher sum. So this is extremely dangerous as well, because just this much money is created out of thin air. So like, you know what the repercussions are the same in 2008. A lot of money was given very easily to Americans to buy houses. Okay. uh, so easy loans, and they were unverified loans. Like they were not even checking if you have any kind of credit history or whatever, right? People were buying two houses because on the assumption of, like, hey, house value keep going up. Okay, like that's like, it's a meme, right? Like it's just keep on going up. But they realize that, hey dude, most of these guys can't pay these loans back. Okay. And that's what happened. And then the entire and the insurance and their other financial systems, stock market was based on the fact that, hey, our like our housing market is so strong, we are going to back it by these bonds and this and that, right? Like, so all these systems had some kind of financial stake in the housing market, and it crashed, and the entire economy uh, tumbled down because of excess ease of cash given out to people. Is there something I'm missing?
May I just like give a parallel of this example? So far what I'm trying to like wrap my head around is, again, going back to John Baudrillard's book and simulacra and simulation. When we transferred the value of gold to cash be by making cash by itself the replacement of gold altogether, now we were making the promise of giving money equating to money. That's how digital money is created, if I'm simplifying it way too much. It's not inaccurate. Am I right to assume that?
Yeah, 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 completely,
So
completely.
think about the irresponsibility you can do in a banking system that's not as well regulated when it comes to due diligence. And I want to bring an example of something that sparks hatred in every Indian I know, is Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi. And it's I don't understand why people don't think about those examples in the same light, because essentially was what Vijay Mallya was able to do is convince banking officers who were in charge of the authority of the bank, in faith in Vijay Mallya's business ventures, of paying back the loans.
Right.
Same with Nirav Modi. He recruited exactly two corrupt officials from one branch of a nationalized bank, and he paid them to issue as many documents that were equivalent of money for
Right.
it to amount to 9,000 crore rupees. This is beyond. This is besides all the embezzling of funds. That this is
Yeah.
besides all the transporting of diamonds to inflate their value. This is just plain printing money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, again, right? Like, there's this. I don't know what the Netflix show is called.
Bad boy billionaires.
Maybe Bad Boy Billionaires, right? That's something I think people should watch. It's a fun watch. And see, this is what happens. This is again. I'll talk about. A centralized system, right? Like, in this system, there are these banks which are point of failures, right? Like, there are these two people, corrupt people, who uh like, gave so much money to these guys. But what we don't realize is this, even though it was given by, like, printing of money or whatnot, but it's still people's money who keep their money in the bank, gets spent, or, like, that's what happens. That liquidity goes into such bad loans. And even in 2008, or even right now, when these banks have such failures, it's a direct attack to the money of people like us, right? Like, what happens is, we pay taxes, and now you will say, bro, only 4% people in India. No, man, like, we pay GST, right? These are, there are direct taxes and there are indirect taxes, right?
Yeah,
So we can't just talk about income tax, right? We pay GST, so everyone contributes to the economy. And what happens, this money, these taxes are used to bail out banks. They used to bail out Punjab National Bank, or Yes Bank. So all these big institutions, they're using public money to bail out bad loans provided by them, and it's their mistakes, right? So these banks are too big to fail, and they get bailed out using public money. That means our money is being used for paying bad debts. It's weird. It's, you don't realize, we debate a lot. We debate a lot about, like, hey, why are you building hospitals, or, like, why is healthcare free? But we don't look at the sides where all this wastage is happening. And even in 2008 is something we looked at. The worst part was all these big banks, right? Like Wells Fargo and whatever. The government in USA bailed everyone out. Not everyone, like most of the banks out, and they were just fine. They gave bad loans. They didn't do their due diligence. They didn't do any kind of research. They were safe. But people who took loans, they were just screwed, man. Like they didn't have jobs because everything collapsed. So this is what I just wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point to bring the entire taxpayer angle into it, because essentially you're not eligible to these bad debts. Uh,
Yeah,
Under most circumstances, the people who can appear to be eligible for bad debts are eligible for bad debts, which usually are people with villas in Goa with
yeah,
Enrique Iglesias at their birthday party. And it's not people like us with a Jupiter, right?
yeah, right. Yeah, and the thing is, the risk to reward ratio of you not paying back a loan versus someone with extraordinary influence and power not paying back the loan is crazy, dude. You probably will lose your life, right? Like it's that bad, right? Like these people will call you continuously, or like come pick you up, or like anything, man. I don't know, right? Like so that's what happens, right? Like when you, but if you have money, you can just go to London. So
Well,
that's
uh, our
yeah.
frustration about corrupt Indian banking aside,
It's not just Indian banking, it's everywhere. Where corruption comes from is centralized systems, right? Like when a few people want to control the entire economy in however they want, that's where the issue is, because here we have points of failures, which are these centralized systems. Now it's not just India, right? Like if you look at Zimbabwe, with what happened, their currency is extremely, so a lot of country is trying to uh, use money and show that hey, we are extremely strong by just manipulating numbers, by changing what GDP data means or how to calculate it, by showing that hey, we don't really have inflation, by manipulating numbers, or trying to increase the stock market when actually economy is terrible. So all these things just to show that hey, we are running a good economy is hurting us.
this is before understanding that central reserve banks of countries are now players within the stock market. So, authorities that essentially have the power of issuing currency within their own jurisdiction now own proper, like tangible assets in
Yeah,
stock market,
yeah.
in the world reserve currency. For example, is it the Swiss bank that owns 90 billion worth of investments in the US stock market?
Yeah, so it's possible, and it's not a bad thing to do, because see, as a it's I'm completely okay with that, right? Because you have to hedge, right? If one thing fails, then you need some kind of other value for it to hedge, right? So I'm completely okay, but how they manipulate it is basically hey, let's, the stock market is going down, right? हम आपको, we'll give you 0% interest loans. Okay, so that is so so they flow in money in the economy. So what do people do? They use this money to purchase goods, purchase stocks, purchase houses, um, inflating whatever the prices are. So even these assets, you see, stock markets वगैरह, why there was a huge even during COVID, what happened? US gave like quantitative easing is what we call it, right? Like it was very easy to access funds, so people took the funds and they put it in Indian stock market. They put it in US stock market. So what happens? It looks shit. Stock market is going crazy when your economy is not. So the access to capital is also a way that they manipulate this thing, or like they can say like we'll reduce capital gains, right? Like they can change with the taxes, so people are more risky, and they, so things like these banks can do to like basically manipulate the economy.
Okay. Now that we've established these facts and like this series of opinions that we have, I kind of want to ask you in an about an area where my expertise is, I would say, one on a scale of 1 to 100, which is decentralized
Yeah.
value and cryptocurrency as an extension of decentralized value. So, do you want to let our viewers know what crypto is in its basics, along with what decentralized value and decentralized finance is currently?
So I will talk about Bitcoin first, okay, because that's the only cryptocurrency which matters, right? Like as a currency, like we use cryptocurrencies in a term. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna ramble. In a very like what do you say? Like we just use it very loosely, but Bitcoin is the apex predator of currencies. And why is something I will explain, and it will be very easier because we spoke a lot about money, right? So Bitcoin is an peer-to-peer digital currency which is decentralized. I will explain all this, right? Like these are jargons, but I will explain. And it's on the internet basically. So what does this mean is no banks, central authorities, or countries can control the Bitcoin network. When I say Bitcoin, we talk about a monetary network as well, right? Uh, I can send money to Anuj, uh, and he can receive it without taking HDFC, excuse me, Google Pay, ICIC Bank in the middle, right? Like I can transfer the value to him directly, and this is decentralized. What this means is a Bitcoin computer or uh, is present in every possible country and every possible city, and that means no one can attack the network, right? There is no one bank where you can go and steal gold, right? Like to just give a this thing. So Bitcoin network is a small computers or small nodes in different part of the world, which you can't break into. And it's a very cool it's an open blockchain ledger. What does this mean is any transactions that I do or anyone does is recorded for lifetime. The first transaction which happened on Bitcoin, you can go back on the network and see, and any transactions which are happening is accessible to everyone in the world. So one good thing is it's pseudo anonymous. That means you don't have to give in a document saying that, hey dude, I'm 18 years old, I have this much bank account, or my parents have a account in your bank to open it, right? Like anyone can open a Bitcoin wallet address and transact and take part in a global system which is not controlled by anyone, right? Like you don't even need to, like it's very hard for you to send money to someone in China, okay, because there's so many intermediaries, right? Like it probably takes 7 days to transfer or whatever, right? And there are so many middlemen who try to steal your money and foreign exchange वगैरह करो. So this is the idea of Bitcoin. Like is, I mean, Anuj, do you have any questions regards to this? Because I don't know if it's something you didn't understand.
My question is, what is
Yeah.
the importance of decentralized when it comes to it, and what's the
Okay.
extent of decentralization and aversion from bank institutions in that case?
Awesome, awesome. So I will explain how it is different from fiat system. Okay, how a Bitcoin is. So like if we understand about the current system, banking system, the limitations are it's concentrated. The power is concentrated on the central like RBI in India, or Fed in US, or something like that, and they can print as much money they want, or they can demonetize as much money they want, right? Or they can kick you out of the financial system. Anuj, you say something on your podcast which my government did not like. I'm not saying Indian, right? It's all these countries, right? I did not like, I will freeze all your bank accounts. What will you do? Like, you have no access to money, which is the most important part of your life, because right, it's autonomy, it's store of value and whatnot, right? So you can be cut off a banking system. In cryptocurrencies, in Bitcoin especially, the supply is limited. Okay, and it's a supply is limited. There are only 21 million bitcoins that will ever exist. So you know that, hey, it's there will be no more printing of bitcoins, there will be no more, no one can take you off the system, and anyone can join the system, anyone can leave the system, right? No one controls your money, and you get to actually own your money with Bitcoin. In bank, you have to trust multiple third parties that, hey, you will give access, they will have access to your money. That's the basic idea. What I mean by you get to own the money is basically you need to remember 12 words. Okay, that's all you need to remember in your head, or you can write it down, you can do whatever you want, and access your money anywhere in the world. Let's say you go on a protest, right? uh, let's take an example of Myanmar, right? The government came in and they took all the gold, they took all the money, they took all the properties of people. Now, as if you had some amount of bitcoin with you, even if it's $1,000, what you could do is you can fly away to a different country, log into go online and remember your 12 letter word and transact value in that country. It sets you free from trusting any kind of authority with your money. And this is one thing. And when we talk about decentralization, that is extremely important, which I think is the theme of the discussion, is basically Bitcoin network is run by something called the miners. Okay, so miners are people who are incentivized to keep these the blockchain running and verify all the transactions and do all the bookkeeping, basically, right? And these miners are located in different parts of the world and different cities, and they are putting in energy or power to keep the Bitcoin system alive. Okay, so this is what it means by decentralization. With centralization, we have HDFCs, one server or whatever servers trying to control one money. Like, you might have noticed, right? Like, it says that, hey, HDFC 3 to 6 not working. I can't access my money in 3 to. What if, like, this happened with me, right? Like, I went to a hospital. It was literally a crisis situation, and my HDFC was not working at between like 3 a.m. at night when I had to buy medicines to someone. Like, the guy was good. Like, he just said, ki, hey, you pay me later or whatever. Uh, Paytm wasn't working, but HDFC was down. So what would I generally do? So this is their central points of failure. And if someone gets access to HDFC servers, right, you can just change numbers in your bank account, and no one is going to probably know for a very long period of time. So that is something which is possible. But Bitcoin network protects $1 trillion worth of money as of now. I mean, it's probably more. Let me just check. So no, it's less, but it's gone up to like a $1 trillion of economy is protected in the Bitcoin network, which is decentralized, because people like you and me are running the Bitcoin network, and the points of failures are all these computers. So if you want to attack Bitcoin network, you need 51% control of the network, which is very hard to do.
The next question I have is, of course, a slightly awkward one. Is something that I lack complete knowledge in. Is that it is easy for me to understand why a government might have conflict with a concept like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I just want to understand why how this conflict can be in favor of the people and could be accommodated by the government? If you have the answers, of course, this is a complex
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah. No, no, it's I see. This is what I do daily, so it's okay, right? So see, the government has problem with the concept of Bitcoin because it's everything that it stands against, right? Because no one controls the Bitcoin network. You cannot change the monetary policy of Bitcoin, right? You can change the monetary policy of your this thing. Now the Bitcoin system is an opt out for people, right? Like if you don't trust your government, like so if you don't trust your government or how they function, or you don't trust the world economy, which probably can fail, right? So it's an opt out that you can choose the Bitcoin monetary system. Why they don't trust is because it's very simple, right? Like new things you don't understand, okay, and it's very easy to dismiss something you don't understand because it's different. And the concept of and again, right, like they don't have a control over the system. So they're like, hey, my we won't, right? Like people, government likes to control things maybe in a very good way because uh, just to give kudos to RBI, they have they have extremely good policies, okay, like which secure our money, okay. Like it's very hard for you to lose money over an internet scam in India because of the extensive guidelines RBI has, right? Like you don't hear Indians falling for Nigeria scam. It's very hard, like because so in a good way as well, right? Because people can probably lose money because it's an open market. It's very good for people because they don't have to trust anyone with their money, okay. Like they are self sovereign with their money right now. Again, you were talking about sovereignty. We are giving away our sovereignty to the government or any centralized organization. So this is about self sovereignty of your money, which is so liberating, that knowing, like you sleep with a mind saying that hey, you will have access to some of your money even the worst thing happens, right? Like so that is something very interesting for a person, that he will always have access to a value, store of value, which is uh, it's is designed in a way that it will increase over a period of time. It incentivizes you to hold the currency instead of spend it. And what is the last part of your question? I forgot. Legality is I mean, it's not very simple, like for me, I'm just saying it. But legal, see, it can coexist. The thing is, it's very simple because there are 1.4 or 5 crore people who are using cryptocurrencies or have bought cryptocurrencies in India. Look, oh my god, that number is huge, and I think it's bigger than the stock market. So more people have and like use cryptocurrencies, or will be using cryptocurrencies than stock market. I don't know the exact figures. So this is very good for the government because hey, they have a new source of revenue, right? So hundreds of crores of rupees can be generated by the government if we tax the trading of cryptocurrencies, which is fine, right? Like that's a good coexistence. And that and if they don't do that, then we create a parallel economy, which is black money, which is not good for the economy, right? So it's in the best interest of countries to regulate cryptocurrencies or something like Bitcoin. And sadly, what happens is whenever a country tries to ban Bitcoin, a reverse effect happens, that more people are aware about Bitcoin and they go and try to buy. So the premiums of buying Bitcoin increases. Nigeria tried to ban Bitcoin very recently, and people were trading at a 40% higher, uh, like the people paying 40% more to buy Bitcoin, and then they had to reverse it because like it just went nuts. So even like us, people like us, right? Like Indians, when someone says don't do something, you will go and do. So if India tries to ban Bitcoin, it's gonna be chaotic. That's why they've not banned it, right? Like that's why Nirmala Sitharaman and Anurag Thakur, who are like the finance minister and the finance ministry, they're very mindful of what they speak. They've never spoken about a ban. They've spoken about regulations. They've spoken about innovation, what the blockchain can bring. So I'm very keen to see what India brings in. And hey, this is geopolitical, and this is extremely interesting, which I think you will find interesting. Um, Countries which have troubled economies, okay, uh, for whatever reasons, right? Like it could be natural reasons, or like someone they can use Bitcoin as a currency to run their country and put Bitcoin in their national treasury, because of the stability of Bitcoin. Because if you see, a lot of countries, their money system is screwed. India, we are privileged to live in a very nice monetary system, which is not that bad. And what happens is, when you talk about US being the global reserve currency, what they also do is, smaller countries, they say, dude, they bully you, right? Like they're like, hey dude, if you don't do this, we will take all of your money off, or we won't pay you, and all these things, right? Because your money is dependent on the US dollar exchange rate. They're like, hey, we won't exchange with you. So these smaller countries can use Bitcoin as and put it in their uh, reserves as a hedge against all these global manipulation, right? Which countries are trying to do. Like, if if you tomorrow US tries to cut off India's trades and won't accept India's US dollar, we could use a alternative currency such as Bitcoin to trade with the world without even. So there is a war coming, right, between, not a nuclear war, but the war will be digital, right? Because, or it will be monetary, between US and China, right? And people will have to choose sides. Hey, either you're going to transact in US dollar, or digital yuan is what they have started now, right? Like they've made their own kind of crypto centralized, CBDC, it is called, central bank currency, anyway. So that is somewhere, someone has to pick a side. But historically, as India, we have always been neutral when it comes to these wars, right? Like we have been neutral allies to most of it. So imagine if like someone has asked you to choose between these sides, and we're like, bro, we are not choosing. We will transact in a currency which is truly neutral, which could be Bitcoin. So this is also is something which I think a lot of countries who would like to be neutral and not pick sides between China and US could end up picking Bitcoin
Okay,
for
we're
transactions. Yeah.
almost out of time. I just need to discuss one final thing. Is the, I mean, and under the current circumstances, the amount of crime that is associated with Bitcoin, and I'm talking about
Right.
transactions made in Bitcoin for criminal
Yeah.
activities.
Right.
That's something that we need to put light on, and I believe regulation in general might bring that under control.
I would completely disagree with you, because we see, I have the numbers, right? I know the numbers. It's 0.4% of total Bitcoin market cap, which has been used for criminal activities. And current market cap of Bitcoin is like $0.6 trillion. So 0.4% of that. And the total US dollars used for illegal purposes is around 4 or 5 trillion dollars. So look at it, and it's a medium, right? Like it's you just so I'll give you an example, right? This is something Nick Carter had said. Just because Pablo Escobar holded so much US dollars while dealing drugs, you cannot ban US dollars, right? And there's nothing you can what's the worst part? Like using money, cash is extremely harder to track, but using a Bitcoin network, It's a public open blockchain, so it's dumb for you to do any kind of illegal transactions on a public network where all your things could be tracked. But I don't believe regulation is the solution, because even everything is regulated, we still have kidnappings, we still have crimes, and all of these happen even without Bitcoin existing or not, right? So did kidnappings increase after Bitcoin came into existence? No, kidnappings used to always happen. Did ransom? Not really, right? Like, it doesn't have any kind of huge impact, even statistically speaking.
Yeah, that's all we have for this episode. Thank you so much, Dheeraj, for being on this episode. By the way,
Yep,
I just need
it's pleasure.
I just need to clarify to the audience that this is in no way financial advice of investment.
Not at all. No, 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 not at all. It's just an educational thing which you need to know about, because you are curious human beings listening to deep fried neurons.
Okay, I'm pretty sure curious is the only thing that comes here in deep fried neurons. Curious and bored, of course. That's my uh,
Yeah,
that's my people.
but
This conversation I had with Dheeraj over money was only semi-candid. I will say there was a significant amount of allocation that I did, a significant amount of research that I asked him to do before we did this podcast, which is why it was slightly scattered, slightly uh, detailed in parts, which is good for me. I hope you liked it. But there is a certain amount of information that I was supposed to get out, and I couldn't do that within the flow of the conversation. One of them being the social contract theory and my failure to connect it to the larger topic. Uh, the evolution of currency sort of becomes elemental if you look at it in the context of social contract theory. At least in early societies, the threat of violence has to be exported to an early government. And that government needs a little bit of every resource. They need to tax the marketplace, they need to gatekeep it and regulate it. And that's why the barter system sort of fails to be efficient, especially in the aspect of taxation, because they can collect all this indigo, but there is nothing to be done with that indigo but to be exchanged for extremely low quantities of rice with a merchant who is not in a desperate sense. Just an example. Please do not tear me a new one in the comments. But what I'm trying to tell you is that a currency system universalizes it, which is obvious now that I've said it out loud, but it can be here just in case for anybody to like take notes. The second thing that I sort of wanted to get out of my system before I go is the history of the rupee, which we did not go into much. The rupee as a word, or rupaya, is a old Sanskrit word for a roughened silver coin, and India has long been a silver currency economy, and the value of rupaya only fell in 1873 when the British and other European countries found silver mines, which sort of undervalued the rupee because it was mass manufacturable, or the material that it was based on became readily available, much more readily available than gold. And after that, it sort of adopted, the rupee adopted its value in terms of the UK sterling pounds, but they could not replace the currency within the country. Actually, it went so disastrously wrong that some of the British officers in charge of keeping the currency within the country confiscated all the golds within the Central Bank of Kolkata, or Reserve Bank of Kolkata, back when that attempt to change rupaya with sterling pounds happened. But the rupaya eventually became an equatorial thing for the Queen's face on it, which essentially meant that a rupaya was worth UK sterlings. In 1944, it falls into the gold standard intentionally or unintentionally, and in 1950 officially. And furthermore, I think it's already been spoken in the episode. Further than that, I hope you liked this episode. Please support us on Patreon if you liked the content that I produce. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube. Keep listening whichever platform that you listen on. Consider buying the merch, which might be on in Instagram. The post might be linked down in the description. And stay healthy. Bye.